Dingell. She represents Michigan's 12th congressional district, and she sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. She's also one of the lawmakers who questioned the EPA administrator on Capitol Hill this week. Let me start with this memo in the news this morning here from Scott Pruitt to his staff, writing effective immediately, the deputy administrator, chief of staff, and chief financial officer will have final approval over expenditures by agency personnel over $5,000 made on my behalf to execute my official duties. Is this a step in the right direction, do you think, or is this too little too late?
Well, one, I think it's too little too late. Two, I don't see anybody independent in there. They still all directly report to him, and you have to look at the transparency and how things are happening. But it would have been nice when he took this job if he had understood what the consequences were of the different decisions he was making, of the different actions from travel to renting a home. And he's now trying to, he even did this after the hearing this week. So I actually think people's confidence in this EPA administrator is gone. And I don't think that there's anything that's going to really restore it. I
just want to spell out some of the alleged impropriety here. Excessive travel expenses, $43,000 soundproof booth installed in his office, condo rental linked to a lobbyist on Capitol Hill, the cost of his security team, and his treatment of employees, just to name a few things. You mentioned you're astonished he's still in his position. What's the conversation like with your colleagues across the aisle about this? Why is he still in this job, do you think?
Well, the president has continued to express confidence in him, which I don't quite understand. You know, what concerned me more at the hearing this week, and there were a lot of questions about his expenditures, et cetera, which are very valid and real, but I asked him questions about a regulation that was promulgated in January on some of the air hazardous pollutants, which are some of the most toxic in this country, which could actually end up increasing pollutants in their impact on people, impact on children, impact on seniors, impact on communities living in factories. And he couldn't answer any of them. We don't know. I'll have to get back to you. I'll have to get back to you. I'm really concerned about this man running EPA and what is happening to the environment throughout this country. I come from a state where water has been polluted with lead for our young children. And how many communities across the country have environmental crises facing them? And I'd like to know that there was someone at EPA that cared about what was happening to people in their communities.
I'm glad you brought up that exchange. We're going to watch a little bit of it. Again, your questioning of Scott Pruitt from Thursday of this week.
Yes or no, did EPA conduct an analysis of the health effects, including the potential increased risk of cancer, of this decision?
That's something we'll have to provide and verify.
Did EPA conduct an analysis of the potential health effects of this policy on children, babies, or pregnant women?
That's something we'll have to assess and provide.
Did EPA conduct an analysis of the potential health effects of this policy on older Americans?
I hate to be redundant, but that's something we'll have to assess and provide.
He hates to be redundant there, Congresswoman, but he was time and time again. What's your sense of what the EPA looks like, how radically it has changed since before President Trump took office?
I think that this EPA has gone back to pre-60 days. They are trying to gut every major environmental regulation in this country. And look, I come from a business background. I understand that there's a time for balance, but he's trying to gut everything. You know, the French president addressed us this week in Congress and said there is no planet B. Well, there isn't a planet B. And I'm really concerned about what is happening in industry, across this country. We need to continue to clean up our air, to protect our Great Lakes. He has zeroed out the money each cycle since he's been EPA administrator for protecting the Great Lakes. The Congress, Republicans and Dems all put it back in. But it should bother people that somebody who doesn't care about the air we breathe or the water we drink or keeping our fresh waters clean is the person that's the administrator of the EPA.
In a perverse way, have these ethics scandals distracted from that? Do you think? I think that was maybe evident in the questioning that you did before or on the committee there on Thursday. Do you think that we've lost sight of that? The Americans have lost sight of that there is this shiny object. They're not paying attention to the rollback of these regulations.
I think that that's one of the problems we have right now in Washington. I hope people don't let their hearts become hardened and we stop paying attention to issues that we need to. I think they're very strategic decisions made sometime to detract people or from focusing or to deflect people from focusing on what some real policy, some significant issues are that impact us every day by these kinds of different scandals or these different things. We need to be, that's why when I questioned him, I didn't get into the ethics. I want the American people to know that they are rolling back laws that protected them from breathing mercury and formaldehyde and getting lead in water. They're rolling these rules back. And, you know, we think that America's safe now, that we can live in communities and be safe. I've got a neighborhood in my own hometown that the kids' increase in asthma has dramatically increased, and now seniors is going up. We do worry about this. We should be able to live in this country and keep and protect our air, our environment.
Last question here just about vetting. We've been talking about Scott Pruitt. We had a new Secretary of State confirmed by a very narrow margin, the narrowest margin we've seen ever, I believe, by the full Senate. You've got Ronnie Jackson, put forward by the president. He withdraws his nomination. Does experience matter less? I know that you have to defer to the president as he submits who he thinks should be at the head of these agencies. There's been a history of deferring to the president. He knows who he wants to be advising him on these issues or leading these departments. What's the status of experience, having the proper or right experience in Washington today? You mentioned people's hearts getting cold, getting inured to the way that things are. Are we at a point where expertise, professional expertise, no longer matters as much as it should in Washington?
What I think we need to, no, I don't think it no longer matters. And I think we all need to worry about ensuring that we're getting good, seasoned people into these jobs that know what they're talking about. What I worry the most about, why do a lot of people are not going to want to go into public service? Our communities, our government, our civics is as good as the people that are willing to serve. We all have a responsibility. Democracy, our democracy is one of the greatest forms of government in the world, but that means we all have to be part of it and participate. And I fear that many people are just looking at what is happening and getting turned off and want nothing to do with government. But government is who we are. Are we perfect? No. We've got to keep working together. We've got to be civil towards one another. And I am very worried. I do think that we need to be vetting these candidates more. The president is entitled to pick who he wants, but some of these people are not qualified for the jobs that they're being nominated for. And how do we respect the office of the president, but also make sure we protect our country?
All right, the Congresswoman from the 12th District in Michigan of the